The conference room smelled like lemon polish and old paper. Someone had opened a window too far, and the wind kept tapping against the blinds like it wanted in. I sat at the far end of the table next to a pitcher of water no one touched. Across from me was my younger brother Zachary Brooks, 29, freshly shaved, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit but looked expensive. He glanced at his reflection in the dark screen of the turned-off TV, adjusting his tie like this was a job interview. Our parents sat next to him, Margaret and Tom Brooks, mid-60s, tired in the eyes but polished for the occasion. My mother kept patting Zach's hand. My father said little the way he always had when he wasn't in control. At the head of the table stood Graham Whitmore, our grandmother's estate attorney. Older than both our parents, with silver hair combed straight back and a voice like gravel warmed by sunlight. He'd known Grandma Margot for over 40 years. Called her the only client who ever corrected my grammar. This was the will reading. Margot Chin, our grandmother, had passed away 2 weeks prior. She was 78, quiet, brilliant, and frugal to the bone. The kind of woman who clipped coupons, wore cardigans from 1991, and somehow paid off my entire college tuition without ever mentioning it to my parents. We all assumed the house, the savings, what little there was, would go to Zach. He needed it more. That's how the story always went. Graham read through the legal preamble with practiced cadence. Then came the line that pulled the air out of the room. To my grandson Zachary Brooks, I leave my primary residence on Hamilton Drive, my 2007 Toyota Camry, and the funds held in my personal savings account, ending in 3482. My mother exhaled like she'd been holding it in for days. Zach smiled, not smug, just relieved. He leaned back slightly as if life had finally thrown him a bone. Then came my turn. Graham adjusted his glasses. To my granddaughter, Elena Brooks. He paused. Too long. I leave $1 and my enduring love. That was it. No pause after, no explanation, no exception clause. Someone chuckled too loudly to be accidental. I think it was one of the cousins on Zoom. Or maybe it was Zach. I didn't turn to look. My mother made a small dismissive sound and touched Zach's arm again. She never needed much, she said, just loud enough to be heard. No one looked at me. Graham moved on. More legal clauses, something about the garden furniture. I couldn't focus. I stared at the single paperclip on the folder in front of me. Gold-colored, the kind Grandma Margot used to buy in bulk. When the meeting ended, Zach shook Graham's hand like a man accepting a promotion. My father thanked him. My mother asked where the deed paperwork would be sent. I stood up and walked out before they could pretend to say goodbye. Outside, the wind had picked up. The sky had gone that soft gray just before rain. And in my purse, I still carried the thank you card Grandma had written me 6 months earlier, folded so many times it was barely legible. Don't ever let them confuse silence for absence, darling. Quiet people carry louder truths. 3 days passed. I didn't answer texts from family. Not that many came. One from my mother, brief. Hope you're not upset. You've always been so independent. That word again. On the 4th morning, I was in the kitchen stirring oatmeal I didn't want when my phone rang. Graham Whitmore. His name looked too formal on the screen. Like the call would be too. I answered on the 3rd ring. Miss Brooks, he began, then cleared his throat. Elena. I was hoping you could stop by the office. There's a separate matter your grandmother requested I handle with you alone. I didn't ask why. I didn't say anything for a second too long. Then, what kind of matter? Not part of the public will, he said. She left instructions. Very specific ones. It won't take long. His office was cooler than before. Same leather chairs, same silence that clung to the walls. Graham stood when I entered, as if I were my grandmother and not her granddaughter. He didn't offer coffee, just motioned for me to sit, then locked the door behind us. That sound, soft metal catching made something shift inside my chest. He retrieved a small fireproof envelope from a locked drawer. My name was written on the front. In Margot's handwriting. Blocky, slow, deliberate. She said to give this to you personally, he said, laying it down gently, and only if you came alone. I didn't touch it right away. I stared at it, like it might evaporate if I blinked. She prepared this nearly 4 years ago, Graham added. Reviewed it every year, never changed a word. I finally reached for the envelope. The paper was heavier than I expected. Take your time, he said, then stepped out of the room. He didn't need to say, this changes everything. The silence had already said it for him. I broke the seal slowly, careful not to tear her handwriting. Inside was one page, handwritten, no corrections, no hesitation. I unfolded it with both hands like opening something sacred. Elena, if you're reading this, then I've already disappointed some people, and I've finally trusted the one who never asked me to. I stopped breathing for a second. Her voice came back to me not how she sounded in her final days, but how she used to speak in the kitchen, with one eye on the stove and the other on the weather. You always listened when no one else did. You remembered which light switch stuck. You learned to make pie crust with your hands, not a machine. I remembered that. The sun coming in through the side window. Her showing me how to press the dough, not roll it too thin. She used to say people rush things when they don't trust the result. When I was 23, I moved to Geneva. I told the family I was a translator. What I didn't say was that I translated financial reports for people who never used their real names. I blinked. Geneva had always been a blur in her stories, a city made of snow and soft scarves. I learned early that people who make noise often waste money. So I did the opposite. I watched. I invested. I kept the accounts quiet. I could almost see her desk, wood worn down on one side, the leather-bound ledger she never let anyone open. The account in Switzerland now holds approximately 4.2 million. You are the sole beneficiary. I stopped reading. Let the number just sit there. Not sink in, just wait. You won't find this amount in any document from last week's reading. It's held under a trust I created outside the estate for a reason. They wouldn't understand. They'd say you don't need anything. But I've watched you give when no one gave back. I've seen how you work, how you disappear to keep peace. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. She'd seen it, all of it, without ever saying so. You were never invisible, Elena. They just looked with the wrong eyes. At the bottom was her signature, Margot Chen, still neat, still proud. Below that one line, written more softly, almost as an afterthought, let this money do for others what you've always done, quietly make room. I folded the letter back along the creases, not because I was done, but because I wasn't ready to read it again. The room was still empty, quiet, but I didn't feel alone. I walked to my car with the letter still in my hand, didn't put it in my bag, didn't fold it again, just held it creased and quiet like it might still be warm from her hands. The sun was out, but the sky had that dull, overexposed look, the kind that makes everything feel farther away than it is. I got in, closed the door, and let the silence settle. No radio, no engine, just air. My hands rested on the steering wheel. I didn't cry. Not at first. I told myself it was just a lot to process, that it didn't matter, that I was fine, but grief doesn't care about logic. It comes when your guard is lowest, when there's no one left to impress, no one to defend yourself against. I reached for my phone, opened my mother's name. My thumb hovered over the call button, then I put it back down. What would I even say? That the woman they thought was cheap had outlived all of them in grace and foresight, that their daughter, the one who always made do, had just inherited more than they could imagine. No, that wasn't the part that hurt. The part that hurt was this. They hadn't even looked at me that day. Not really. They'd looked through me, past me, around me, like someone they didn't have to worry about, and I had let them. Until now. 2 weeks later, I flew to Geneva. No one knew. I didn't post photos, didn't text anyone from the plane. It was cold when I landed, bone-deep cold that didn't care you were a guest. The sky hung low and gray, but the streets were spotless, clean like secrets. The building was on a quiet street with no sign, just a brass plaque Banque Etienne and Fils carved so lightly it almost faded into the stone. Inside, everything smelled like leather and winter. A receptionist in her 60s greeted me by name. Her smile was small but warm, the way people smile when they already know something you don't. She led me through 2 glass doors, then down a narrow corridor where the carpet had no footprints. Waiting inside the last office was a man in a navy suit, glasses tucked into the front of his shirt. Late 70s, sharp eyes still. "Miss Brooks," he said, extending his hand. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman." His name was Henri Morel. He'd worked with Margot for nearly 3 decades. He didn't use words like client. He said she curated her money the way a conservator handles paintings deliberately and never with ego. I sat in the same chair she must have once sat in. Henry opened a black folio. Inside, clean documents, handwritten notes, investment logs dating back to 1989. And then a page labeled simply The Heart Fund. "Named after your middle name, I assume," he said. I nodded, even though I'd never known that. Elena Hart Brooks, a name Margot had helped my parents choose. The account balance blinked at me from the page. $4.241 euro 80.57, neatly aligned, no cents left floating. But it wasn't the number that stole my breath. It was the list of disbursement clauses, thoughtful, narrow, intentional. Funds to be used for financial literacy programs for single mothers, microloans for women starting over after 50, emergency support for elder caregivers. Each clause had a handwritten note next to it in Margot's pen. Women like me. Women like Elena. Women people forget. I didn't cry. Not there. But something in me softened. Not because I felt rich, but because for once I didn't feel invisible. Henri watched me for a long moment. She could have spent it. She could have hidden it, but she believed in letting quiet things grow. He closed the folio and slid it toward me. "It's yours now." But she left you a blueprint. And frankly, I think she knew you'd follow it better than most. I left the bank just before dusk. Geneva was pale and golden, dipped in lake light. The air smelled like bread and faint pine. I stood at the corner across from the water, letter still in my coat, folio in my bag. No celebration, no champagne. Just the quiet thrill of being trusted. The invitation came by group text. Housewarming for Zach. Come see the upgrades. No punctuation from our mother, just emojis and a location pin. I stared at the screen for a minute, then put the phone face down on the counter. I hadn't spoken to any of them since the will reading, but something in me needed to go not to be seen, but to see. Zach's new house was our grandmother's old house. Same shutters, same porch. But now there were string lights and a Bluetooth speaker near the door. The air smelled like store-bought candles and microwave appetizers. I walked in without knocking. Nobody noticed at first. Our mother was by the kitchen island arranging cheese cubes. Our father was holding a tumbler laughing at something Zach said. He looked lighter now. That kind of weightless you only get when people give you what you didn't earn. When our mother saw me, her face lifted into that polite surprise people wear when they don't know where to put you. "Elena, you made it. How are things?" Her voice had that extra brightness like she was trying to talk over something. "Busy," I said. She nodded quickly, not asking what with. Then, the line she always used like a reflex. "You've always been so independent. I'm sure you're doing just fine." I smiled. Not wide. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small photo in a silver frame. Margot standing in front of the bank in Geneva, wearing her gray coat and holding her purse with both hands like she always did in pictures. I placed it gently on the side table next to the scented candle and a stack of real estate magazines. No one noticed right away. I didn't say a word. Didn't mention the trust. Didn't explain the photo. Didn't offer updates. Let them think what they wanted. And when Zach raised a toast thanking family who believed in him, I stepped outside. The air was colder than I remembered. I zipped my coat. Didn't look back. The office was nothing special. 2 rooms above a laundromat. A window that stuck when it rained. Beige carpet someone had tried to make look intentional with a rug. But the door had my name on it. Chin Hart Financial. Chin for Margot. Hart for the middle name she gave me, though no one in my family ever used it. They preferred simple names, edges they could hold on to. I didn't tell anyone in the family about the business, not out of spite. There just wasn't space in their understanding for what I was doing, and maybe that was the point. The first person I helped was a woman named Lorraine, 61, recently widowed 5 years from retirement and drowning in her late husband's medical debt. She cried in my office when she realized she didn't have to sell her car, said it was the first time anyone had shown her a spreadsheet she could understand. The second was Camille, a former waitress who raised 2 boys on her own and never opened a savings account because, as she said, what savings? We started with $30. 6 months later, she had $100 tucked away, and a sense of calm she said she hadn't felt since 1998. I didn't take photos, didn't post testimonials. No before and after transformations. This wasn't about marketing. It was about what happens quietly when no one's asking you to prove yourself. I kept Margot's letter in my desk drawer. Some days, when I felt the smallness of the space or the slowness of progress, I reread the last paragraph. Let it help those like you, quiet girls no one thinks are watching. It was never just about the money. It was about offering choice and time and a way forward that didn't require permission. One night after everyone had left, I stood by the office window watching the laundromat lights flicker below. I thought of Margot folding her money into silence, thought of how no one ever asked her why she lived the way she did. They just assumed. I think that's what made her choose me. Not because I needed it, but because I'd understood her need not to be seen as needy. People always think legacy is loud, a statue, a plaque, a wing of a hospital. But sometimes it's a spreadsheet explained slowly, a bus pass covered, a late-night call answered without judgment. Sometimes legacy is the thing no one claps for, and I was okay with that. A year passed. The rug in the office still curled at the corner, the window still stuck when it rained, but the calendar on the wall was full. Names, check-ins, second chances written in pencil and slowly inked in. On a Friday afternoon, Lorraine came by with a thank you card and a loaf of banana bread. She wore lipstick that didn't quite match her sweater and smiled like someone who'd learned how to breathe again. She handed me a folded piece of paper, a typed letter. "It's the email I sent to cancel the debt collector's payment plan," she said. "Took me 3 tries to hit send. But I did it." I nodded, didn't say much, just let the moment land. Before she left, she paused at the door. "Your grandmother, she said she must have been someone." I looked at the picture frame on my desk, the one with Margot standing in front of the bank in Geneva, wearing that gray coat and holding her purse with both hands. "She still is," I said. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, I pulled out the card Margot had once written me, the one I'd carried to the will, reading folded too many times. I read the last line again, quietly. "To no one. Don't ever let them confuse silence for absence, darling. Quiet people carry louder truths." I smiled, then turned off the light and locked the door behind me. If you've ever been left out because they thought you didn't need more, maybe you understand. If you do, just leave one word she should have heard more often.